Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are located today. I'm Art Baudo. I'm a Principal Product Marketing Manager, and this is Under the Hood with AWS. Today, this is a show where we go every week to talk about and deep dive into some of the areas about Amazon Web Services and how you can get started and take a look at them and learn a little bit more. Today, my guest is Seb here, who is so big in the world that he just goes by first name. But I will give Seb the opportunity to intro himself as we get started here. Seb, why don't you intro us and let us know where you're joining from today?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, Art. Thank you for having me in this show. I'm Seb. I'm Sebastian Stormack. Sorry, I forgot to write my full name. Maybe I will do that during the show. I'm principal developer advocate at AWS. I'm at AWS since quite a long time now, more than 11 years. And most of my days I spend trying to inspire developers, inspire builders to use AWS. So that goes through this type of video to educate, to inspire, to make customers discover new aspects, things that they didn't know about AWS. It might be also blog post. I'm a contributor on the AWS news blog channel with Jeff Barr and the fantastic team of writers that we have there. And I'm also the producer and the anchor host for two podcasts now, one in French since 5 years, and I recently inherited from the AWS Developers podcast as well since a couple of weeks. So that keeps me quite busy.
Yeah, and it's my pleasure to have you here. And for those who are just joining us, drop us a line as to where you're joining us from today. We're really excited to have people from all over. I am joining in the US. I'm located actually in California here. Obviously, I'm in the office. We'll see people kind of walking behind me. It seems as though as soon as we start filming, there's lots of people around all of a sudden. But thrilled to see all of you here. So drop us a handle where you're joining us from. And for those who are staying up late in Europe, Seb is with you as well. Yeah. So I don't think he mentioned he's over on the, I guess that's the eastern side of France today, joining us from over there.
Yeah, almost in Germany. I'm really at the far east of France in a city called Strasbourg, where I had the chance to give a talk tonight in front of a local crowd, talking about generative AI and how to customize large language model for your businesses.
Well, but even though we're talking a little bit here at the beginning about generative AI, I'll be honest with you, we've done quite a few shows and discussions on generative AI. Today, we're going to mix things up a little bit. This is our first show in 2024 talking about how to build, sign, publish a Mac application in the cloud. So this is our first time talking about Mac in 2024, that is. And we are one of the only cloud providers, Seb, that have Mac-based instances. And it's a great way for you to get started. I think anybody out there who has an iPhone obviously knows what a Mac is or has using Mac-based instances. And also, those of you who have a Mac PC as well. So this is a great way to get started and use and develop in the cloud. Last time Seb was here, he and I did a little thing where Seb actually demonstrated how to get started and do some application corrections and actually do an app development in the cloud here, which is something that we'd like to kind of build on from our discussion previously. We think it's a great mechanism to teach or to walk everybody through how to do some work, specifically a demo building that in the cloud. So Seb, you and I talked in advance of today, but maybe you can give everybody an overview of some of the ideas we have for today. And excuse me. And before I just choke over my own self, maybe we can also talk a little bit about getting started with Mac in the cloud and how anybody could potentially follow along with us as we go through this today.
Yeah, the first talking point and the thing that very few people know is that one of the many categories of EC2 instance you can get from AWS, it's actually a Mac. So there is a category called EC2 Mac, and it allows to get you a macOS machine, either Intel or Apple Silicon, ARM, running in the cloud. And if you know EC2, it's all the good things you know and love about EC2, but with macOS. It means you have an API to start and stop these machines. You have EBS volumes that you can attach. You can create snapshot of your EBS volumes, archive them. You put your EC2 instance into a VPC, a network, a private network. You use security groups to protect the access of your Mac. So all those things you know since almost 20 years now about EC2 is applied to macOS. And the next question is, why should I use a Mac in the cloud? And that's a very legitimate question. And there are different use cases, but the one we see the most with our customer is to build application. Because if you want to build an iOS, iPadOS, tvOS, visionOS or macOS application and distribute it on the App Store, on the Apple App Store, these applications have to be signed. And that signing process is only officially supported on macOS. So you have to have a farm of build machine, just like you do your continuous integration, continuous deployment for a Java, JavaScript application. You need a farms of machine to do your continuous integration, continuous deployment with macOS machine. And a few years ago, we talked to our customer and they told us that big pain point of managing local machines to do that. Like you have a closet and you put 2 or 3 Macs Mini, and then you have a sysadmin that needs to reimage this machine every time there is a new macOS version or new Xcode version. Xcode is the IDE, the development tool that brings a new version of the Swift programming language, for example. It takes admin time. So the question raised to AWS was, what if? What if we can use Terraform or the CDK to create our Mac machine in the cloud, just like we create our Linux machine? And that's why we have EC2 Mac. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I should pause to let you continue.
No. This is a great way to get started. I cringe, the idea of the literal closet sub that where someone has to place all of their Mac their Mac Minis or their kind of farm. The other thing is sometimes it's a little bit complicated to manage all of this along with anything else that you're managing at the office. And your primary function is developing the application to make it available to customers. I think we have both dealt with a lot of customers that use and leverage AWS to get their application signed, to get it out there. And it's a lot of the time is to make the experience even easier, the phone experience, the iPad experience, easy and even easier for a customer to use and get started. I think we've all been to, at least here in the US, Seb, where anytime I go to a store or a doctor's office or anything like that, you're inevitably using an application connected to someone's back-end application to, whether it's something simple, check in, register for a new appointment, confirm you are who you are. So the importance that in this day and age of making sure that you have an application and customers are able to, and that application has been verified and signed is really, really high for customers that we work with. And I imagine people out there have done, I think a lot of people have been doing application development on the Mac side. And so this is a great way to both get started and also, if you're not necessarily using a Mac yourself, but you want to deploy there, this is a great way to not have to deploy the resources or pay for all the additional resources, but yet get something deployed in the cloud. Using the cloud resources, you can get something deployed in iOS very quickly.
So there is one big difference with EC2 Mac compared to what you know with EC2 Linux and Windows. Is that there is no virtualization. So it's not a virtual machine that you get. It's a full Mac Mini. So let me repeat that. When you acquire an EC2 Mac from us, you get access to a physical bare metal Mac Mini. And we have different types, as I said. We have the Intel version, the M1, the M2. So depending on the hardware characteristic that you want, you can select from different instance type. So getting access to physical hardware is not new on EC2. It exists since many years. We call that dedicated host. And the process to get started with a Mac is first you acquire the dedicated host for you, and then you start and you stop it. And to start and stop it, you use the regular EC2 API or the EC2 console or a script like the CDK or whatever. And under the hood, it's a real Mac Mini which is sitting in the rack in our data center. And the magic is that we connect the Mac Mini to the EC2 Nitro card. I guess if you're watching this show, you have heard about Nitro already, but Nitro is a piece of technology from AWS that combine software and hardware that allows virtualization of the network, virtualization of the I/O, virtualization of the CPU for Linux and Windows. But in this case, we have a Nitro card which is connected to our network, which allows access to EBS or VPC, and that Nitro card is connected to a physical Mac Mini. So the Mac Mini has access to the VPC and to EBS. So when you start an EC2 Mac, it's actually an EBS volume that is attached to the Mac, and it's booting from that external drive, not from the internal drive inside the Mac Mini. But Nitro is really that magic piece of technology. It's not magic, it's technology. But that allows us to give you access to all the things you like from EC2, but on a physical dedicated host. And you know what? Our engineering had to design something so that we can turn off and turn on the Mac, because on some models they don't have an electronic power off and power on. There is a physical button. So inside the rack, they design a robotic finger to actually push the on and off button, and that's super smart and super
I really
cool
wish that we had I really wish, Seb, that we had a demo of it so that people could, or a video, excuse me, showing it, working here. This, by the way, attests to the creativity of engineers and also attests to the creativity of AWS, the willingness to do this and get this started because of the reset function here that's happening. But so I want to emphasize again for folks that, once you get a Mac-based instance here, you're not getting a virtual machine of some sort. You're getting a full Mac Mini to get started and do that work and do that learning. I just want to mention, we do have someone out there from DC. I think it's Eric from DC, or my man Eric from DC, was telling us that he developed a Mac application. It's a retail application that tracks out of stock and in stock items. And he's going to use some AI workloads to transform it. So pretty cool. Just a note to Eric, as a matter of fact, some AWS folks are out there in DC this week. So if you see a bunch of folks out there as well, it's a, sign up and, say hi. We welcome that. And then we have another feedback. We have, we need an AWS. The AWS API call is a GNOME that pushes the power button. I don't know. Here in the US, I have a little aversion to gnomes at the moment because some people have way too many of them in their front yard. But I don't know if you're a gnome fan.
That's right.
Or if
no, but I like the analogy.
Yeah, I like the analogy as well. And I might mention, Eric also says that he actually just got back from picking up his AWS Summit ticket. So Eric, have a great time at the AWS Summit. So for those who are going to be in Washington, D.C., that is, so here in the United States, the summit that Eric is referring to is happening in DC this week. I'm afraid I won't get a chance personally to be there. I was at the LA Summit a couple of weeks ago as well, and always a fun experience to be at an AWS Summit. So a shout out to anybody. Seb has been to numerous of them, not just here in the US. These summits are located on all over the world, and I highly encourage everybody to take a look at our events page and go from there. Okay, before we move off of it, we also have one thing from Jasmine, who is a fellow co-host as well. So she is defining for us what the name GNOME means. Apparently, little trivia we learn every day. which I hopefully can deploy. And Jasmine wants to know what I have against gnomes. Too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. That's all. I have some neighbors that have, I feel like they could open up a gnome shop. So, that's all. I'm not prejudiced against gnomes. I want to be clear. Okay. And Jasmine also informs us that gnomes are primarily nocturnal. I didn't know that. Things you know. All right. So let's get back on the track here before we spend the next hour talking about gnomes, Seb. For those just joining us, we have quite a few people just joining. I see here. Seb is a developer advocate at AWS. I'm a principal product marketing manager, and every week we do something on this show where we try to talk to people about how to get started using a deep dive into some aspect of AWS with a hopeful goal of giving you some information that you can deploy and realistically potentially even copy from some of the work we're doing. So today we're talking about Mac for the first time this year, although Seb and I have done a couple of these in the past, we haven't had a chance to connect for this year so far. So right now, Seb, do we want to get closer to doing a little bit of demo to show some folks how to do that? And if you have any questions, by the way, as we either go through this content about anything involving AWS, or I was going to say Mac instances or how to get started, please let us know. We're really excited to drop that in the chat channel here. That's what this session is really for.
Let's be interactive. So if you have questions about EC2 Mac or EC2 in general, but this session is about Mac, just drop them in the chat. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So when we said that we can do iOS application development in the cloud, let's be clear. The application development is done on my laptop, on your laptop, using the Apple tool Xcode. It's the IDE to develop iOS application. What we are going to do in the cloud, and what you can do in the cloud, is to actually implement your continuous integration and continuous deployment, CI/CD pipelines, in the cloud, just like you do for your XYZ, Java, Node.js, Python, whatever, name it, application with Linux. So you have a bunch of Mac machines. You connect this Mac machine to your source code repository. Whenever there is a code push, a pull request or something, it triggers a build, it runs the test, it signs the code, and it can even publish to the App Store. That's the magical part for the
magical, but I think that's the key part, not just magical part here, Seb, because I think that for most of the people out there that are doing development, that is the key thing you're looking to do. And many of our customers that are doing application development, yes, there's plenty of free applications that are used on the iPhone, just like other platforms. But many of these applications are also monetized by customers. So if something's not published, then you aren't monetizing. And monetization likely, as they say, keeps the lights on in your building, pays your mortgage, that sort of thing as well. So that's the goal, is to make sure that we can help you monetize or publish the apps as soon as humanly possible.
And the reason why you want to automate all that, it's to be faster, quicker. Whenever there is a code change, we build and we test everything to ensure that there is no single change that will break the overall application build, that everything still compile and all the tests are running correctly. And then push your new release as fast as you can to your customer, because that's the only place where code is happy, is in front of customer. All the code that stays in a code repository without being published live, it's an asset, it's a liability that you're creating. Okay, but I'm not going to explain too much the advantage of continuous integration. That's something I think is well known in the industry now since many years. What I want to focus on is how to do CI/CD on the Mac, because there are a couple of things that are different with the Mac, especially EC2 Mac. It's that there is no screen attached to these machines. Yeah. So you connect to this machine over SSH, and there are two things. First, Apple did a fantastic job to document the build process with a graphical user interface. But when there is no graphical user interface, it's still possible to compile and to test and everything. But the level of documentation you will find is much lower. And that's probably an understatement from me here. There is not so much documentation explaining how to do it. And the second problem, or the second challenge...
That's why we're here.
I'm sorry?
I said, that's why we're here. To make
exactly. It's to explain the differences.
Yeah, because this is something important. We did have this, as we discussed this last year as well. You know, this hasn't changed, the lack of the graphical interface. And so there's a lot of customers and a lot of people who haven't used the machines are used to it as well. Yeah, and someone says, hey, the two of us are the documentation. We're doing our best here, Eric. All right, go on. So.
The second challenge is that macOS behaves slightly differently when there is a graphical user interface and when there is no graphical user interface.
Right.
Especially for to access the secrets, like the keys that are going to be used to sign your binary. But I'll go into the details during the demo. So maybe for this demo, I can show some source code. If you can put my screen on.
Yeah, you got it. Let's go. All right, folks. So we've got the. Is there a chance, Seb, that you could get it slightly larger on the screen here?
That one, the code, yes. The rest, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think that we can see the kind of representation of your iPhone on the right-hand side.
So here on the right side, you see the simulator from the development environment. And on the left side, you see the screen of a real phone that I have in my hands. If you see me, I have the phone here in my hand. So that's a real phone. And I developed a simple application that allows to keep track of your memories. It's a very simple application where you can select a picture from the list of pictures in your library. You can add a note. You can add a title. And then you say just create. Then you say just create a memory, and here you have an application that crashes when I try to do that. So that's the typical demo effect. So if I create the memory, yes.
But while we talk through this, the point of this, folks, is not to evaluate Seb's application here.
I'm terribly bad about graphical user interface design, so don't judge me on that. I'm more a back-end person than a front-end engineer. But there is something really ugly there. It's that gray background around the picture.
Yeah,
so what I propose to do,
hideous, I would tell you.
Yeah, I know. I know. So what I propose to do is I'm going to change that to use another color. I'm going to commit and push my change to my source code repository. This will trigger a build, test, and publish. So by the end of this Twitch session, we should see the new build, the new version of the application arriving. And I'm using a TestFlight to distribute the application. So TestFlight is an application from Apple that allows developers like me to distribute an application to a group of testers. And this phone is my dev phone, and it will receive the copy of the application. So I'm not really publishing on the App Store, but the binary will be on the App Store. It's just that it will be funnel or sent only to my test user.
Yeah, this is the same program. This is the same program that other application developers, anybody on using a Mac side, TestFlight is from Apple as well. We can drop a link to it in the chat session. Sorry, I'm struggling for words at the moment. But I suspect that most people have actually used that if you're an app developer. But regardless, I will try to help you out by dropping it in here as well. Okay.
So the application
and then we have somebody who says, hey, maybe gray is our feature for people who are colorblind. That is a good point. By the way, as a note, just a very random note on that, we are updating a lot of our documentation to be better for people who are both colorblind and visually impaired and other things as well. But that's an entirely different conversation about how we do that for our general purpose web pages. So let's get back to removal of the gray here, just for purposes no other reason other than because we're trying to do some update to an app and give everybody a chance as well.
So just one more thing about the app. It used the AWS cloud as a backend, so the pictures are stored on S3. The metadata, like the date and the comments, are stored in DynamoDB. There is a GraphQL API that the app is connecting to. There is sign-in, sign-out provided by Cognito, and I'm using AWS Amplify, which is a library that I can use in mobile application, not only iOS, also Android or web applications, to provide me a high-level API to access all these AWS services. But that's the app. So I'm not going to make a lesson on Swift or Swift UI, but there is one line here called background gray. So what if I remove this line? You see that in the simulator, in the IDE, it automatically refresh and it remove the background. So the situation right now is that my phone has the old version, but my laptop has the correct version. Okay?
By the way, I like one point for everybody to see here. Now that the gray is gone, we can actually read the description about your memories here, even though they're rather simplistic, but that's okay.
It's a dev app, yeah. So Xcode is the IDE from Apple. It has an integrated Git client, like most modern IDE these days. So I go to this section. Sorry, I cannot make it bigger. I can increase the size of the text in the middle of the screen, but not on the sides. But what I'm doing, it's a Git interface. I stage the change. I put a commit message like remove gray background. That's something I learned from my parents. It's always put a commit message. And then I can commit and I can push the change
for those out there,
repository.
Yeah, I believe, and even as we're getting in a day and age where we've demoed also here using kind of generative AI to potentially help with coding and stuff, adding in a comment, I cannot emphasize the importance of doing it for. Also, it helps jog your own memory as the developer. You remember, why you did something, why you commented. So even when I decide to comment out a line, in this case, we comment out a line, I frequently add a comment to myself telling me why I did it, just as a memory, or even if I just put the date in, like on the day I did it, so that later I jog my memory to go, oh, I did that on June 25th, which is the date we're doing this today. So that, I understand, okay, that was probably June 25th, I was doing this Twitch session, Seb and I were doing this, that sort of thing. So I find it to be very helpful for both kind of a historical purpose and tracking things as well. So sorry, I interrupted you, but I still
really good. My code repository, sorry for that, is available on GitHub. So it's a public project. I can share the link later on the chat. It's Amplify iOS Getting Started. It has all my source code, and you see here it says, hey, the last change was 1 minute ago. Remove gray background. So the Git repository received the change, and the Git repository has a couple of actions, so scripts that are going to be run when I change something. So if I click on action, I can see that I have a couple of pipelines that run in the past. And right now I have a pipeline running, remove gray background. It started 1 minute ago, it's in progress. And if we click there, oops, it's very, very small, but I have a larger slide to show you. It has different steps: pre-build, build, test, deploy, and cleanup. So at the end, if everything goes well, I should receive an app update here. Maybe I will even receive a notification message. And in the mail that I prepare, let's do that like this. I should receive a new mail saying, hey, there is a new build available for you. That will take like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to step back for people who this is their first time doing some of this. If you are taking a look here, we have effectively, we had an app. You could see very clearly the app on Seb's phone still does not have the update on it. We have done the update to the app here in the code, and we're now in the process of publishing it using the using the system here, but it also gives you a status as to where it is in the process of both compiling and publishing it. And this, I would argue, Seb, maybe different than you, but I would argue this is somewhat, there's a lot of similarities if you have done this on the Linux side and other sides where we do show this kind of green to progress, and we show the various steps as well. This is a slightly different way we publish it, that way things get published on the Mac side, but it's not completely unfamiliar, I think, from our other methodologies.
You're totally right. What I showed right now, it's exactly the same in all platforms. The big difference is that all these steps are actually executed on an EC2 Mac running in the cloud. So I installed the GitHub agent on the EC2 Mac, and the agent is communicating with GitHub repo and receive the orders and the scripts to execute. So what's happening there? It's a compilation, code signature, code testing on EC2 Mac.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's the other key here is we're showing that we're doing all this development on the EC2 Mac. And so someone asked, is this a GitHub AMI? We are doing this in GitHub, but I don't believe this is actually an AMI itself.
No. It's the real GitHub on github.com. The only thing is that the GitHub agent is installed on EC2 Mac. So maybe let's use a diagram to explain that. So that's what you have there on the screen is the full pipeline that is currently running. And I would like to go through all the steps. And hopefully by the end, I explain the last step, we should receive the update on the app.
So fingers crossed, everybody out there, please bear with us and hope that we get this published. Look, so I've been lucky here. Almost everything has worked, so I'm confident. Let's go.
So what do we have? On the top left side, we have me and my laptop, where I type my code and I commit and push my code to a Git repository. I'm doing the demo right now with GitHub, but it works with GitLab, it works with CircleCI, it probably works with Jenkins as well. I never tried, but there is no reason. As long as you can install an agent on macOS, then you're gone. On the top right side, I have the application. I took a different screenshot because I'm doing this demo with different application. And I have test flight. And in the middle, we have the AWS cloud, my AWS account, where I have one EC2 Mac instance running. And on that EC2 Mac instance running, I install all the developer tools, so Xcode, for example, and the GitHub agent. You're okay with that? That's my starting point.
I am okay with that. Yes.
I don't see the question as I'm talking right now because I see.
Yeah, no, there are. So nobody
if
has.
There are questions. Just
if you've got a question for us, folks out there, about how we're setting this up. So we're starting here. Sebastian, Seb's laptop is here for the development purposes, and we're going to connect that into the cloud to do this development using the EC2 Mac instances. Okay, so we commit. And
I commit and push the code to the code repository. That triggers an agent on the EC2 Mac instance, a standard GitHub agent that I download from github.com and just configure to work with my repository. And that agent will trigger a sequence of action, groups of scripts to build, test, sign, and deploy my application. So the first thing the script is doing is to collect the backend configuration for my application. Remember, I said that application is connecting to a GraphQL API, DynamoDB, S3. So obviously it needs to know where is that API, what is the URL, what is the endpoint for the API. You might have different backend environment for development, testing, production. So the first thing the script will do is to pull the configuration for production for AWS Amplify. That's a JSON file that I'm going to receive that contains the endpoint of S3, of the API, what Cognito service to use for authentication. So this is very specific to AWS. If you're not building your application with Amplify, you don't need to do that. The second step is to prepare the keychain for code signature, and that's super important. So remember that to push an application to the App Store or even to TestFlight, you need to sign it. And to sign it, you need a key. A key has two parts, a private key, that the private version of the key or the private part of the key that you keep on your site. It's a secret, you cannot share that with anybody. And there is the public version of the key, which is hosted by the Apple Developer Portal, and it's public, anybody can see it. So you need to retrieve the secret key in order to later sign your binary. So where do you keep your secret key? You have the choice, and on AWS there are a couple of options. I saw customers storing keys on S3. Why not? At the end, it's a file, and you can manage the
and
security,
S3
the access,
is encrypted,
right? And
right?
S3
So
is
S3 is
encrypted.
so it's
So
not
why not?
exposed.
I saw customer using AWS config, because in config you can store secrets, encrypted secrets as well, and you can define IAM policies to define who and what has access to the secret. I like Secret Manager. I know the cost is not the same between AWS config and Secret Manager, but it's $1 US per month per key or per secret on Secret Manager, so it's not huge neither. So I personally store my key on Secret Manager, and I have a very strict IAM policy that defines what roles are authorized to actually fetch that secret. So my EC2 Mac instance has a role that allows to connect to Secret Manager and retrieve my secret key. Okay?
Yeah.
There are a couple of additional things to do in terms of the keychain. So the keychain is a secure database on macOS that stores all your secrets. If you're running on a Mac right now, this is where your passwords are saved if you ask to remember the passwords. This is where your Wi-Fi password is saved. Okay, so any secret at macOS level is stored in the keychain. It's a secure database. There is another thing you need to put in the keychain. It's the Apple public key, the public certificate that was used to sign your key. That's something Xcode is doing automatically on my laptop. I didn't even realize it's there. But on EC2 Mac, you start with an empty keychain just after installing macOS, for example. So all these little steps that Xcode is doing for you automatically on your Mac laptop, you need to programmatically apply them on the keychain in the cloud. So install the Apple public certificate and massage a bit the permissions. The keychain itself has a permission. Each element inside the keychain has a permission. So you need to authorize the builder tool, Xcode build, that's the name of the command line, to actually read the secret, because it will need the secret at some point later to sign the binary. Am I clear? I'm pausing here. Any question? Am I clear?
So there are no questions in the chat session right now associated with this. So I'm going to go with that means that lots of people find the content to be very clear. But let's just maybe review and simplify for myself. So we started here. We're going to send our code, in this case, into GitHub. And one of the things that your Mac has done in the past, or it did before, is it created this public key. You need to make sure that you have that public key when you're using a EC2 Mac mini instance in order to get started. And it's relatively easy to find that. And I think that those of you who are developers likely do know that already, but let us know if there are any questions. We do have one person who's told us, Eric has told us, that it is 100% clear, which is the best type of clear.
Thank you.
There is as well. But did I summarize reasonably correct?
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. I didn't mention where is this key coming from. In the Apple world, that's something that the Apple developers know. So you need to go to the Apple Developer Portal, and this is where you can request a new pair of key for a new application. So each time you create a new application, you go to the Developer Portal, you register your application, at least the name, and it generates a key pair for you. You download the secret parts of the key, and then it's your responsibility to keep that somewhere on your laptop, on an external hard drive, whatever. And that's the file that I uploaded once to Secret Manager. So that's it's a one-time operation. I need to upload it to Secret Manager so that each build after that can retrieve the secret key to sign the code.
Okay, we do have one other question. We did cover this a little bit earlier. But AJ Potato, I like potatoes, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. Probably steak and potatoes or steak and fries, whatever. Anyhow, that's potatoes, though. Are the physical EC2 Macs shared or dedicated? We talked about this earlier at the beginning, but I'll let Seb answer first, and then.
Yeah, it's a very important point, and you're right to ask a question, because right now we are putting a very sensitive secret, your application signing key that proves that the application is yours. So EC2 Mac are dedicated hosts. It's a physical hardware which is reserved for your exclusive usage during the time of the lease, during the time you're using it. And after that, we wipe them totally. There is a quite extensive process of scrubbing to scrub the internal hard drive and to scrub the NVRAM, so the volatile memory of the Mac as well.
Yeah, we covered this a little bit earlier, but I also want to that it's worthy of bringing it up again. I also make mention, folks, that the concept of the dedicated host is not unique to the Mac instances. It's just the difference, I think, on the Mac side and the others is that in the Mac instances you get a dedicated host. Period. That's the offering.
That's the only option,
right? That is the only option. Whereas on the other instances, you're using a virtual instance that is a, quote, shared resource, but it's not entirely shared. We don't have enough time today to get into the virtualization here. It's equally clean, and it's just different. And that's the difference between some of the Linux operations and the Mac operations. And so let's say the Mac is its own development environment. And all of us who have developed or worked on Macs before know, excuse me, there are a handful of what I characterize as fun idiosyncrasies that exist, and that's just the way they are.
It's actually a matter of respecting the Apple terms and conditions. If you read the macOS license, the right to the end user agreement for the license, we cannot sell virtual machines for multiple customers using the same hardware. That's very clear in their license. So the reason why you have to reserve a dedicated host for your own use is just because we respect the T's and C's from Apple. That's it. There is no technical reason.
Right.
So let's progress. So what happened next? After that, we build the code. So I have a script that invokes a command line that takes all the source from GitHub and go through a regular compile. It also downloads all the dependencies, the libraries that the code is using, and compile everything. There is nothing special there. It's exactly the same command as you would use on a laptop. The next step is quite interesting. The next step is to run the test, and there are two different types of tests you can run. One of them is the unit test, so it's all the logical tests that you apply at code level, and the other are graphical user interface test. So even if there is no screen attached to the EC2 Mac instance, you can start an iOS, an iPhone, an iPad simulator, upload your application, and run your user interface test. So in the Apple world, there is a library that allows you to start an application, simulate the click of buttons, and express the outcome of these clicks and those touch on the screen. So you can test your graphical user interface. And by the way, again, it's not specific to EC2 Mac. It's exactly the same user interface test as you would do on your laptop. What I'm just saying here is that they run on EC2 Mac as well. Even if there is no screen attached, you can run an iPhone simulator on EC2 Mac and run the test. Sorry.
And yeah, no, I was just going to say two things. One, I think that everybody who's a developer out there has done this unit testing and has created unit testing to the first part. But also, if the other key thing here is one, our application today that we're dealing with has a graphical user interface with it and associated with this. It's very clear, probably in everybody's eyes. But you need to do this additional testing to make sure before you publish. Don't just trust what you have seen. I highly recommend that you do this, whether it's for a Mac application or just a PC-based application. Okay.
And there is something cool in the cloud. We have a service, AWS has a service called Device Farm. So you know, if you're a developer, you know that testing in a simulator doesn't catch all the problems you can have in real life when your application runs on a physical device. So in the cloud, we have a service called Device Farms that as a farm of physical iPhones and Android phones and other devices where you can send a package, it will run the test on physical, real device and send you the result back. I'm not doing that here right now because it would add like 30 to 40 minutes to this demo, but it's possible. And I have the scripts that interact with Device Farm to actually do that. So if you want...
Yeah, I dropped a link to Device Farm in
Perfect.
the chat channel. So if anybody has any questions or hasn't ever used it or explored it, this is one of the beauties about AWS is the number of kind of software pieces and other tools that we have to help you out and get you started. This is just one of those small things that's out there. So I highly encourage checking it out. And as Seb mentions, the only real reason we're not using some of this is we only have an hour here today. So keep in mind some of the work that we do here is only because we're a little short on time. And if you met us outside of doing something on Twitch, you'd find that we do take a lot of time, especially with some of these larger applications, to make sure that we do this sort of testing as well. It's one of our kind of best practices. Okay, let's finish up here, Seb, because
and the last step is to deploy. So there is an API for TestFlight where you can just upload your binary package to TestFlight. TestFlight will verify the binary. I don't know exactly what Apple is doing there, but it takes a few minutes, 5-10 minutes sometimes. I guess they are opening the package, verifying the signature, verifying the API you use. And when everything goes well, it just publishes to all your tester. So I talk a lot. Let's reopen my phone. Oops.
By the way, one person mentioned Aaron has talked about Device Farm before. For those who don't know Aaron Hunter is one of our other developer advocates. Seb and Aaron are in the same organization. So two people, just different organizations. And unfortunately, Aaron hasn't actually been on this particular broadcast, but if you tune into our Twitch channel, you're bound to encounter Aaron upon occasion. He does quite a few of our training and certification work, and I work with him on some of that stuff too. Okay, let's take a look. Where are we with seeing our application?
So first, you notice I received 2 emails. One of them is from Xcode Cloud. That's something different. I'm not going to talk about that today. And one of them is from TestFlight saying, hey, Amplify getting started 1.0. I use the reverse date notation for my build number. Look at I don't know if it is large enough on the screen, but it's 2024 0625. So it's today at 9:28 p.m. That's the GMT, the Universal Time in Greenwich in UK. So it's right now. And it says, hey, this is ready to test on iOS. Great. So I can delete that mail. I can go back to TestFlight. And I see that the new version is there. It proposed me to open it. So let's open the new version. And I receive the updated application. There is no more gray background. We can read. I don't know why the last image there, it's not loading, but we can read the notes from the app. Let's restart.
So I will say first, someone thinks that you failed in the update. No, that it didn't fail. No. Sorry, Eric. It did actually go through. So then I do offer a compliment as well.
And if I go back to GitHub, I see that the flow is finished. All the options are green. For each option, of course, I can get the log of everything that happened during that options. If I have to debug something, this is super useful to understand why a build failed. And now the machine is ready. The agent is ready to accept another build, and I can continue like that all day long.
So I'm going to bring up one other thing that has nothing necessarily to do with what we're talking about. Is someone is asking for some advice for folks like themselves who are in the 20-year-old category, whatnot. And my personal advice, if you're interested, I'm going to assume that you're interested in doing development, whether that's iOS work or other development work, is just to continue to play around. And I know there's an overused phrase about failure, but I think those of us that have done a ton of application development, the little dirty secret is, yes, here online, we're doing something relatively simplistic here. So it's easy to not make a mistake. But I'll tell you that, I learn a lot more by continuing to make some of my mistakes, particularly when you're compiling errors and stuff like that. So I would highly encourage you to get started. And I would choose something that I enjoyed to get started with. And I think that a lot of AI tools, you can use those to leverage your skill set once you build that up in a specific language. And you can use that to be knowledgeable about other spaces. And I'll give a quick example that I was using some of our CloudFront stuff, Seb, a couple of weeks ago to do some monitoring. I am not an expert in SQL. But it can help generate some code to put together a query. And my knowledge about coding is substantial enough that I can both understand what's happening and replicate it pretty easily. And so what I would implore you to do is get started, because once you start to understand some of the general syntaxes, while they are not all the same from language to language, the general principles will help you deploy and intelligently understand what other languages are doing as well. And it gives you a great stepping stone to get started. So my advice is to get started on some of it, even if you have some failures and frustrations. I don't know, Seb, if you have any yourself, but that's my advice.
Choose something. Don't try to do all type of development at once, like an Android app, a web app, and an iOS app. Choose one platform, and there are, for each of these platforms there are tons of tutorials. Apple has excellent documentation to get started. So does Google for Android, and for web application like React, there are tons of documentation everywhere. So take a tutorial, go through it, try, experiment. You cannot break anything. So, yes, you can break your code, but that's okay. That's how we learn. If you still have my screen on the,
I do.
You see my history of pipeline run. Yeah, the last few days it was mostly green because I was getting ready for this demo today. But look at my history, the number of red as well. All these are builds that failed for whatever reason, and I had to debug and to understand why. So failing a build is normal. It's normal. It's part of the development lifecycle process.
I think as well. Some days on the way to getting something to work, you have more failures than you have successes. Yeah. So someone offers a suggestion here, potentially trying Amazon Cloud Quest. This is also this is a great way to get started. Other things, if you've never done anything, is you can try to create an app using Party Rock. This is kind of a basic thing. Frankly, even my parents who are retired have tried this to play around with it. They have a little bit of time, but what I have used it for is not just creating something funky, is actually taking the code that's generated from it and studying it against other code that you've had. But if you're going to do that, I think that Cloud Quest is if you're trying to learn more about languages, I think this is a little bit better way to go. I find sometimes if you don't have some of the knowledge, getting the code is just plops you out into a space you may not understand. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, for this specific application, I wrote a tutorial as well that explained how to build that application. The tutorial is linked from the GitHub repository. So once you are on the Amplify iOS Getting Started repository, not only you have the code, you also have the code of the continuous integration action. So all the scripts that were executed on the Mac, like how to set up the keychain, how to prepare Amplify, how to do the build, how to do the local testing, device farm testing, and so on. And at the top of the README, there is a link to the tutorial, and that's a 5-step tutorial how to create this application from scratch using Amplify, using user authentication, an API, a database, and storage for the picture. The tutorial doesn't explain the CI/CD part. It explains how to build the application for yourself.
So while you do, why don't you copy the link here to drop it in, or send it over to me, and I'll drop it in. One of us will drop it in. And we're reaching the end of our hour here together. And so what I'm going to do briefly is stop sharing on your screen right now, Seb, because I really want to
take questions.
we're willing to take any additional questions, but I think we also have an opportunity. We would like people's feedback, and maybe Seb, now's the time to I'll drop a little bit of the survey in so people can give us feedback, let us know what they think. And as an added incentive, if you click and use the QR code, tell us what you think, you would be eligible for a voucher as well. So why don't I do that, Seb, for a second here. We'll take over the screen. I too only have one screen at the moment. So give me 1 sec to do that. And you can, I think you just dropped me the link. So before I do that.
Yeah, I just post on our internal chat the two links, the links to the code repository and to the tutorial. So because I cannot post directly on the public. And then on my screen, I have the link to a short survey to collect feedback and to distribute $25 AWS credit voucher that you can redeem on your account after sharing some feedback with us.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave this up for while we
talk and take questions.
And take any questions. So, and then here's some. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. So, so for those who are in the chat section, you can clearly tell that Seb and I are doing it live, and it's just us as well. So folks, Peppo also just thanked us for giving him a little bit of feedback. So I just thank you for joining us. And so as we wrap up here, I first want to say, take a look. If you have any questions, one of the things I recommend is just getting started. Take a look at the two links I just dropped in. You can take a look at Seb's GitHub, and also the getting started and how to build an iOS application, so you can kind of duplicate exactly what we did here today, which can be fun. And I highly recommend as a great way to get started. As a note, we are here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And thank you to Seb, because it was 11 o'clock when we got started, so it's almost midnight over in France / almost Germany. So appreciate to those of you in Europe or in another country for joining us as well. We have one final question as well. Someone asked if Seb does anything other than Mac instances. Seb is only allowed to do Mac, and he's cordoned off into a corner. It's Mac only. No, just kidding. But
I'm playing a lot with the Swift programming language, actually, and I think that Swift is a fantastic programming language to use on the server. So I'm quite active to have Swift on Lambda, but that's probably the subject of another Twitch show with you, Art.
It is indeed, and I've taken down the Slack as we end here. The other question was have you done any work on Android? I don't know if Seb has. I can attest that I have. But the beauty of Android versus Mac is you're not tied to the.
You can compile on Linux.
And right, so you can do most of your development just using one of the EC2 Mac machines. So there you go. And then someone mentions that they're going to fill out the form, but they were so stressed. Thanks for the advice. Take a look. And then someone also mentions that there is a novice developer. Would it be good to use AWS? I actually say it would be to get started. I think it's relatively simple to get started in the cloud. It's also a low-cost way to get started. It's not particularly expensive. And there's a lot of free tools. And, on many other broadcasts, we've emphasized the usage of some of our free tier. And so if your application doesn't use a particularly large amount of memory, you can do a lot of work, and you get, on like one of our T4G or the T5G instances, you can get up to 750 hours free of usage a month. So it's more a matter of that it doesn't come with much memory. I concede to that. But some of these are great ways to get started as well.
Yeah, and the application I showed today use a backend which is totally serverless. So if you're not using them, you're not paying for it. And there is a free tier for S3, there is a free tier for DynamoDB and for AppSync. So you can start to use all these three services for free. And you are going to be charged only if you start to do some volume for your apps, like thousands, millions of API call. But it's very unlikely that you reach that level of API calls, of that numbers of API call just during your development. If it is just for you yourself and a few friends testing the application, you will stay below. Most of the time, you will stay below the free tier.
Yeah. If you start on a path where you're selling a lot of things into iOS or other places, you'll find you'll start exceeding that, because you'll need memory. You're going to need to manage, cost of handling it, and that sort of database thing. But if you're building a relatively simple app, perhaps even starting with an app just for yourself, like this memory app. I mean, it doesn't really memories app here. It doesn't really matter. You don't need a lot of space for it. I would not recommend, by the way, creating a memory app and uploading every photo that you have on your phone. That's a bad way to get started, because you will start to encounter money then, because but some of these are
gigabyte free.
Right, you get 5 megabytes for free as well. Gigabytes, right. I said megabytes, didn't I? I meant gigabytes. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank Seb especially. This is, as usual, been a fun time. I want to mention, folks, so yeah, 5 gigabytes. Sorry, DC artist. Even I am prone to a mistake here or there. I will mention next week is a US-based holiday on July 4th here for those not outside the US, for those here in the world. So not that we're entirely US-centric. The reality is that the two of us who host are taking a vacation next Tuesday and Wednesday, so that we won't be here next week. But we're going to be back 2 weeks later on July 9th. And we're going to do an episode with a customer on our Trainium and Inferentia. So we'll do a little bit on the AI ML side, which we alluded to a little bit here, Seb, earlier today. So for those interested in that, take a look. And someone keeps joking about my 5 megabyte thing here, saying that they take 5 bytes. It's not.
That's one picture.
That's right. Yeah. So, so once again, thank you, Seb, and thank you for the time today. And folks, fill out the comments. If you have any questions for us, let us know. And like I said, we're here every week, and we'll join you again on July 9th. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.